Welcome to the Self Within podcast, where we will look to ancient traditions and modern insights to seek guidance, knowledge, and practical tools to help us reconnect with our true selves. Join me, your host, as we explore various topics from mindfulness and meditation to energy healing, astrology, and much more. We'll hear from experts and everyday individuals to explore the connections that exist between mind, body, and spirit, and how we can use them for personal growth. Today, we are going to be diving into what it takes to leave that 9-to-5 job, the cozy and cushy paycheck, the role, the job title, the company, and really stepping into what we'll call the unknown, what might be super uncomfortable, but at the same time, soul aligned. And I am joined by a friend and fellow brave soul who, like me, left her longtime corporate career to follow her passion and her calling for wellness and healing. So I'm here with Jinna Penachio, who is a sound bath practitioner, energy healer, and the founder of Zen Rise Wellness and Events. Welcome, Jinna.
Thank you so much, Annabelle, for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I really can't wait to get into this episode with you because I think for people that have left their jobs, that have taken a different route than what is traditional and what's expected, it looks easy on the outside. We're so used to social media where everything is polished and clean. And the reality is that it's super scary. And then when you're actually in it, it continues to be scary. It doesn't necessarily get easier. And this topic has come up quite a few times where I've heard, some of my friends are either thinking about leaving a job that just doesn't align with them, or they've already left and now they're in this place of, okay, did I make the right choice? What's the next thing? What do I actually do? So one of the questions I'm really curious to know from you is, what was that first moment, maybe that initial realization of this just isn't working for me? I gotta leave where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent 25 years in the pharma industry, many different roles, and including sales. And I was raised to be very self-sufficient, very much to not get trapped, to not get stuck in a relationship that I was no longer happy with, but that I needed to stay in because I needed the money, right? That was sort of the impetus of when I was being raised. So now I was in this role for, these different roles for 25 years. And I was just continuously running and gunning. I was a very high performer and I enjoyed it until I had some health issues and, corporate burnout that really had me start to question if this is still the right fit for me. Do I still have this kind of capacity? Will I ever get this capacity back? And it was a really scary situation. What I did is I talked to some people in my company because I was really, I'm not a super emotional person. And then suddenly I was emotional every day. I was crying. I was miserable. I was really struggling to focus. I was really having a hard time producing the results that I'm used to producing without much effort. And so I talked to one of the head people at the company that I was working for, and I learned that they had a sabbatical program for people who'd been there for about 5 years or more, and that I could take 6 months off and really think about it, really consider if this was the right role or not. And it gave me that time and freedom to really explore that. There's some catches with that though, right? And I mean, other people might be hearing that and be like, ooh, I might have access to that program, and you might, and you should ask your HR. There's no paychecks for that 6 months, but I did have my benefits, my health benefits still, and I did have a guaranteed job when I returned. It might not have been the one that I left, which was good because I didn't really want that job anymore. But I did have a guaranteed job when I came back. And then when I came back, I really tried hard for 6 weeks, and I realized it brought me right back to that level of stress that was now sort of intolerable for me to handle physically and emotionally. I was always someone who stress would happen and I would just deal with it. I would just push through. I would always be able to push through. And I suddenly found myself not being able to push through anymore. And then I really questioned, is this aligned with who I am now and who I want to be? And they say what got you here isn't going to get you there, right? one of those moments, and I really had to come to terms with it and really get alignment from my family, because I'm used to bringing in a significant amount of money. We have an 18-year-old daughter who's about to go to college. Now is not the greatest time these last 2 years to take a pay cut, quite honestly. And I think there's a lot of people that are in that situation. They feel stuck. And luckily, my husband said to me, I think you're going to end up getting sick again if you continue on this path with this level of stress. And I think it's time to consider resigning and starting your business that you've been talking about. I've been talking about my energy work for 20 years, and he gave me that opportunity to do that. And of course, that was like, tighten the belt, really adjust my spending habits, really take a severe look at the budget and where we could, tighten things down to make it work. And it was uncomfortable for a while. I'll be totally honest. Then I started my business and I loved it. But then I realized I had this weird feeling like the only source of income was coming from my clients, and my clients were my friends and family, because I didn't have my website up yet and I was still trying to get started. And I don't know, I kind of gave myself the ick, right? Like I didn't want to be that friend that was always calling people and asking them to spend money, and knowing in my own heart that was the only source of income. It just made me feel odd. If I didn't, it stopped me from reaching out to people. So then I had a friend who I'd done some work with at her company, and she had invited me to take on a role, like even a part-time role, just to get some steady income coming in. And that freed me up to actually continue with my business, but in a much freer way, because I wasn't hung up on the income part. So I was still getting the money, but I didn't feel weird about it, I guess is the point. So now it's going pretty well. But yeah, it was a pretty significant, challenging transition over the last year and a half or so.
Yeah, it's funny. So I had a similar story in the fact that I also took a sabbatical at a time when I was like, well, it's there, right? After 5 years, I should try it. And I didn't necessarily, like before that, I didn't have that feeling of, this not working or I'm feeling burnt out. It was just like, I deserve this. I deserve a sabbatical after 5 years. I'm going to do it. What the heck? And then when I left during those couple of months, I'm like, I'm going to try to do as much as I can because, again, same, I had already started the business, like my energy healing and Reiki business. And I'm like, this will be my time to just invest in that, put all of my energy into that while also just being able to do other things with family and travel and things like that. And then when I came back to my role, and I love the people that I worked with, like my team was amazing and super supportive. But when I got back, the authenticity wasn't there for me. And that's the best way I can describe it for people is I started to feel fake in my job because I saw myself on these calls in meetings where everyone else was putting in like 110%. They were like just full of ideas and energy and inspiration and motivation. And I was like, I'm not here. I don't know where I am, but like here, I can't even produce the mental creativity that I used to have. There was a time when I had it and I didn't anymore. And so I was like, if I continue on this path, I'm not being authentic, not only to myself, but also to the people in that room because they're expecting me to produce, to be equally engaged as they are. And having spent like several years in an employee engagement role where like the biggest things we worked on were making people want to feel a sense of purpose at their job, wanting to feel motivated. And I'm like, that also would not be like aligned to that previous role that I had. And so for me, that was kind of like the click of, oh no, I realize this is just not for me. And it's super scary to what you were saying. I'm like, I've always been self-sufficient. I've always had my own paycheck. I've never had to rely on anybody else to give me money or to say, you can't buy that or whatever it was. That was scary. And again, like super supportive husband who was like, let's try it. Let's just try it for a year. And I loved that, knowing that whatever decision we make doesn't have to be permanent.
Right.
And I think sometimes when we make these choices, we're like, oh my God, what if it like we can't find another job again, or we have this gap in our resume that like looks terrible to a future employer, and it's like it's only a year of your entire life. You can then in a year, if it doesn't work, or even in 6 months, be like, "Ah, I made the wrong choice. Let me like go back to what I know." But yeah, things are not permanent. Yeah. They don't have to be. We don't want them to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that you were talking though about your fears, and I was kind of touching upon some of them now, but I guess like what are some of your fears still today? What other fears have come up for you either before or now that you're kind of outside of that 9 to 5 and you're figuring out your own path?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny because what I realized was now my fear, it's not about the money coming in. I did take a small part-time corporate job, but not doing any of the things I did before. So I'm actually really excited about it. And it's with people I love to be working with. But my fear now for my business is getting too successful too quickly, like not being able to keep up with the demand. So I've been very selective about who I'm inviting to our sound bath Reiki sessions in the salt cave is what I'm doing in the evenings. And I am booking out all the way out to July at this point. Where it's only May, right? So it's successful, but I'm as busy as I can handle right now, right? I feel comfortable with it. I feel good. What I'm afraid of is if I really go out there and I really advertise and all of a sudden there's this massive demand that I'm going to burn out because and stress out because I can't keep up with it. And so that's the part where it's like I'm afraid of my own success a little bit, I'm just trying to be careful about how much I put myself out there and also setting my own boundaries, right? Like I lived a long time accommodating everyone around me and sacrificing my own health and well-being to make sure that everyone else is good. It feels good because I was able to handle that before I hit menopause. Now I don't have the buffer. And now when I get stressed, it really, really impacts my health. And it doesn't work. So I recognize my limitations and I want to be successful, but I don't want to be overwhelmed with it. Do you know what I mean? So that's where actually my current fear is.
I love that you're conscious and like fully aware of the limitation. We put these limitations on ourselves oftentimes, and sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it. And the story then becomes, why is this thing that I really want not happening? Like, I've been manifesting this for a long time, right? Like, I've been dreaming about this and visualizing it and meditating on it and like acting on it, but it's not happening. Like, what's wrong with me or what's wrong with the universe? I had this happen to me and I realized that I was the one limiting it because I was too scared of it becoming too big, of like not being able to handle it, all of the other things that I would have to do when the success happened. Success doesn't just come in and you're like sitting back in your lounge chair and you're like, okay, whatever, right? I'm just going to enjoy the benefits, right? There's hard work that goes along with it. It could be you have to hire more people. That's scary. Now you're responsible for someone else's paycheck, right? There are all these other steps that happen, and that can be scary if you're not ready for it. And so I love that at least you're aware of it and you can acknowledge it and say, like, I know it is what it is. And a part of it is setting the boundaries of, I'm only going to do so much for right now.
Right, right. Yeah. So I started out thinking, okay, I'm going to do one event in the evening a month. And now it's starting to get to like, it's, 2, 3 times a month. And that's okay. What I don't want it to be is 5 nights a week,
Yeah.
every single week, and then plus my part-time job during the day. Now I'm stressed out again. So it is a limitation I put on myself, but I think it's a healthy boundary at this stage in my life to recognize that there's only so much I'm willing to take on at this point. And I want to build out the business in such a way I'm not leaving my customers unhappy or unfulfilled, but that I can schedule them into something that's reasonable for both of us, I guess is the goal.
It's almost like you're having to find a new way of working. And I want to go back to this like 9 to 5. whether it's, a 9 to 5, job outside of corporate or whether it's in corporate, right? I feel like having experienced that, it's hard to not be on. And I was talking to my therapist the other day because I said to her, I'm like, I would sometimes feel guilty when I wasn't working. And even though I left my corporate job, I found that in my entrepreneurial stage, I would like purposely or consciously put myself in front of my computer and my laptop and just do work all day. And I did that for a while where I was like, okay, I need to take breaks. Like, it's not the same job. The reason that I'm now outside of this corporate job is because I have much more freedom in how I schedule my day, when I take a lunch break, whether I go to a yoga class, whatever it is. And I don't have to be a slave to my laptop. I remember having to make sure that my green light was on, like on Teams, so that other people knew that I was available at all times. And I would carry my phone everywhere I went to make sure that I could like respond to like messages or calls or emails or whatever. And I don't think we realize how, I don't even know the word for it, but like how exhausting and overwhelming that is. And then like this was just recent. Like I've been doing my own thing now for about a year fully. But just recently I realized like I do not have to do that anymore. Like I can set my own schedule and do my own thing. Um, so yeah, that's also another important boundary and something that we kind of need to relearn as we transition into another phase or another kind of role or job that we want to take on.
A big challenge is feeling like I'm being watched and that my value is based on what I'm doing and my availability. And people are like now available 24/7. And that stress takes a toll on our bodies. And stress is the number one killer. And everybody kind of poo-poos that because it's like, oh, whatever, stress. But it will literally sneak up on you and kill you if you don't manage yourself. Right. So that's where when I say I have my limitations, like that's really where I'm trying to protect my peace, right? And part of that is coming to that realization, if it wasn't a boss that was watching me, then it was like my husband. Like, does my husband think I'm working hard enough to get this business off the ground? And I was really like starting to stress myself out. And he's like, you're doing it again. It was like I almost made him my boss and I had to prove to him. It's always this proving thing. My whole life, I got to prove that I'm good enough. I've got to prove that you want me on the team. I got to prove that I earned my spot. And even once I've proved it, I'm still proving it, right? I mean, I have so many years of jobs where I just went so far above and beyond trying to make sure that I was accepted or liked or cared for or worthy. I don't know what it was, but bottom line is I don't really feel that anymore. My job, my 9 to 5 is 8:30 to 2:30, Tuesday through Thursday, which works really well for me. And now only work when I'm on site because I worked from home for 8 years and it was great. I loved that too, but I'm not in that mode anymore. And now when I come home, I want to be off, totally off. Maybe I'll send, in the very early morning before I go into my day job, I'll send some invoices out for some salt cave stuff just to kind of get it. But when I'm home at night and on the weekends, I'm off. And that's a luxury that I didn't give myself ever when I was in my big corporate jobs, right? Like it was 24/7, even when I was on vacations, even when I was spending valuable family time with people who were like dying. I mean, literally, oh, wait, hold on. I'll be right back. I got to send this email. What? Why? No, please. I mean, yes, certain things are important and you have to respond, but you also have to prioritize your life. And it's okay if you prioritize your peace or you prioritize your family and you prioritize that moment where you're like, I'm not going to answer the phone right now because I'm here in the present focused on this. And that's okay. Or if you just want to Netflix and chill all day and watch like choose your days off and then give yourself that day off. Don't feel like, oh, do all these things so that other people think that I'm worthy enough or valuable or whatever it is. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I think the topic of self-worth is a big one for me too. That comes up a lot. It's something I've had to work on. I still work on it all the time. Just being
Mhm.
aware of like, yeah, that's an issue. When it comes up, I need to silence it. Be like, not now, not now.
Yeah.
It's been hard, but it's interesting that you say that because I think there is, and maybe it's, I don't want to generalize, but at least I feel that for women, it can be this belief that we do have to prove that we can be better, not just better than our peers, but maybe better than a man in that same role who could do it. And I know that there is so much work with diversity and inclusion, but this goes beyond that because it's not just, I love that companies are doing this and they're starting to be very conscious of it, but these are internal challenges that people have, right? I mean, this stems from like childhood for me. It goes way back, right? It's like you can have diversity and inclusion initiatives, but you also have to realize like, hey, I have this self-worth thing and I'm trying to prove to someone. It could be to like your parents, if like cultural or familial influences are really strong. It could be to your partner, your spouse, to yourself, to your kids, whoever. And I think as women, there's this other layer of not just can I hold a 9 to 5, but I also can be a great mom, a great wife, a great teacher or coach outside of work. It's like, how many balls can we juggle and watch? None of them are going to fall because we're going to be so great at all of them.
Yeah. And we are for a
Yeah,
period of time,
yeah, for
right?
a
I
period
mean,
of
we
time.
really can rock it. For years, I rocked that. But then you hit a wall, and it's usually a health issue, right? There's like, okay, you need to slow down now, sit down and rest, and then can I make it back? Like, when I had breast cancer and corporate burnout, I put them both equally as challenging to recover from, honestly. It's the scary part there is, oh my God, will I ever get back to my capacity? Will I ever be able to do all that stuff again? Or do I want to be able to do that stuff? It's an opportunity to take everything off your plate and then you choose what you put back on your plate.
Mm.
And it might be all of it, but most often it's not all of it. It's the very key things that you need, and let everything else go. And that act of being able to let things go, being able to not be the PTA president if you really don't want it, if you don't have the capacity and bandwidth to do that, and you just hand it off to somebody else. Like I definitely had to do that. And then to also not make myself wrong for not being able to do that anymore and give myself the space to heal and rest, like truly rest for a long enough time to where, I've now slowly started to ramp back. Like when I first started this part-time job, I was there at 10 o'clock to 2:30. And then now I realize that I actually enjoy, I get up and I'm ready to go by 8 o'clock. So I get there by 8:30 and I put in the hours and I do the things and it's fun. And I created the role, right? So they asked me to come in and do like a spreadsheet tracker for their clinical trial expenses. No big deal, right? And then I realized that I could take on a little more. So I offered to take on like the office manager type roles of going to pick up groceries and supplies for the office, make sure everyone has what they need. It's a self-expression thing for me. I enjoy doing that. And then I'm also running events because I have an events company. So there are events, and the events can be even like when they have investors to come in and they need someone to put out breakfast and lunch. Like, and I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. So now I feel like I am back in a corporate role, but it's a created role. It's a created life. It's not just me being at the whim of what someone else expects me to do or wants me to do. It's really like I've chosen this and it's really fulfilling for me. So I think that's an important thing to think about is no one, at one point, someone asked me a question no one ever asked me before. They said, how do you prefer to work? And I was like taken aback, right? Because 9 to 5, 5 days a week, that's what everyone does, right? And I was like, well, she said, if you had your perfect schedule, what would it look like? And I actually talked to a woman who used to be a contractor, and she said to me, you know what you should think about? When I was a contractor, I had 4-day weekends every weekend. I worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I had Mondays and Fridays off. And I'm like, that sounds amazing. And then I have my dog that needs to be walked at 2:30.
Yeah.
So I cut it off at 2:30. So that works for me. But to really ask yourself that question, just sit with it for a while and just really, start to explore what those possibilities are. Because there's more than just 9 to 5. There's all sorts of opportunities. It might be some people enjoy working at night, some people on the weekends, some people they just need it shortened, but they can get a lot done, and then they have all this freedom to do whatever else they want to do. There's a lot of options that we don't really offer ourselves. So it's an important topic, I think.
That's true. That's true. I think we think we need to fit into the mold that's been created for us.
Mhm.
But there is a lot more flexibility, especially nowadays. I think if you really want to create that for yourself, you probably will find it.
Mhm. Mhm. And
So,
some people have been in the office, right, this whole time, except for with COVID when everyone wasn't. But maybe they're like seeking, I want to work from home, right? Like there are those opportunities. At that point, though, especially for us when we were working from home so much, we had to prove in some way that we were on, either by our results or that little green dot.
yeah.
But I think there's options for people to create their next step, their next chapters, right?
So, how did you know that you made the right decision after?
Hmm. I will say that in my career at my last company, I genuinely loved everyone I worked with. And this last role that I was in under a boss that I hadn't been under before, and our styles were very different and it became very challenging. And so once I left and I got on the other side, a few weeks went by and then all of a sudden I was like kind of mentally putting myself back into like, oh, our big sales kickoff meetings coming up. Not anyone in sales knows that's like fun, but also a ton of work and exhausting. And the thought of it coming up, but I didn't have to do anything for it. I was like, oh, thank God I'm not. Do you know what I mean? Like I put myself in like situations in my mind of things I used to do all the time, like demos every day, multiple demos. And the thought of doing it again gave me that feeling in my stomach that would sink. And
Mm.
I was like, it's not for me. It's not for me anymore. I'm so glad I left. And the thought of me not having to do it had my stomach go up. And that's my signal for like, it's a positive move that I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. So you had these physical body sensations of this feels right, and you kind of kept going with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I was there for a really long time at this company. So there's still people who reach out to me to ask me questions or whatever occasionally. And what I've noticed about myself is when I take those calls and we start to get into the details of whatever issue they're having, I can feel my stress level rising. Like and then I'm like, okay, we need to step away from this. I'm not doing this part anymore.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. When I left, because I know that the question of did I make the right choice came up like right after. And for me, I remember as soon as I picked the date, I put it on the calendar. I was like, I'm going to tell my boss on this day. And then I'm going to set those 2 weeks and I'm going to leave on this day. And I remember, you're going to laugh, but I timed my departure with the solar eclipse and the lunar eclipse because for people that know about it, like they both have very particular meanings. I mean, solar eclipse is all about like new beginnings and the lunar eclipse is like endings. So I'm like, this is going to be perfect. So I was very jazzed up about it. And after that, I had all of these little opportunities popped up all of a sudden, like things that I wasn't expecting. I had sent an email to someone and I hadn't heard back for so long. And then after I made that decision and it was going to happen, I got the email back and they're like, yeah, why don't we meet? Let's set up a date to talk about this. So I started getting signs that I made the right choice. So I closed off a door to give myself much more space in the other area that was more aligned with who I was. And that keeps happening to me when I find that, I stick with things. I stick with things for so long because I'm like, what if, I can make it work? What if I just push through and magically it just ends up working out and it's so good? And I finally reach a point with a lot of these things where I'm like, no, now I'm tired. I feel like now it's done. And once that decision's made, it's like all these other doors open. And to me, those are my little signals of you're going down the right path. Keep
Yeah,
trying.
absolutely.
One of the things I wanted to ask you too is how did other people react when they found out that you were leaving, whether it was at your company or maybe friends and family that you told?
Mm. Yeah, so people were a bit in shock at work. They didn't see that coming because I had just returned from the sabbatical and I was there for 6 weeks. So they kind of anticipated that I would, be there for the year. But I got to that point where I just couldn't do it anymore. And So I let my boss know, I let HR know, and then I very carefully wrote down a list of all of my favorite people in the company and reached out to them and let them know so they didn't hear it from somebody else. It was a lot of shock. My work people really wanted me to stay. They're used to me in leadership roles, and so they really wanted me to be there. But they ultimately recognized that it was better for me to move on, and they've been very supportive. And I was afraid I was going to lose all those friendships, but I have reconnected with them after I've left, and it was just the same as it always is. So I now get to retain those friendships and not have to deal with any of the work stuff, which is nice. And my family, I mean, my husband was wonderful. He's the one that suggested that I leave and start my own business. So super grateful for him. And my daughter has been very supportive, but also a little bit nervous. You know, she's used to us spending a lot of money and being able to kind of do whatever we want. And we shifted to be very, critical about what are we going to spend. And she took on her own job. She's 18 now, and these are all good lessons for her to learn. And she's making her own money now, and she's being very careful about what she spends it on now. Whereas before, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, well, go ahead, we'll just get that because we could.
Yeah.
And so my friends and family were all, it was surprising because I've been doing that for so long, but they also knew that my heart really was somewhere else, like in terms of my energy work and sound therapy and helping people relieve stress. Like that's ultimately what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, that's great. Because I know that, if you don't have a supportive network, it can be really difficult to share the fact that you're going to leave or that you even want to leave, right? Like I was very selective about who I told. Like at work, I knew that I was going to get a ton of support. And of course, there was going to be shock, but ultimately, people would have been fine with me leaving. But I was very selective with my family. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to tell them right now. I actually waited. Like I had left and I still hadn't told some people in my family. Now that I think about it, maybe it was like proving myself. Like I felt like I don't want to tell them until I feel successful, until things are picking up, until it feels like real. And so I didn't want people to think, oh, she's just not working anymore. She's going to have so much free time to do, I don't know, X, Y, Z. Let me call upon her all the time. And that's more on me on like no boundary setting. But I would say, I think it's okay to also be selective when figuring out who to tell if you don't feel like you're going to get the support that you need in this very scary, vulnerable time, like don't do it. Do it when it feels right for you. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been in stealth mode with certain people for sure. And even like social media, right? Like I've been doing the sound baths in the salt cave for a couple of months now, and it's gorgeous. I've only put out one post with 2 pictures. That's it. And I got a ton of business from it, but I was like, I'm still in stealth mode. Like I'm coming out of it now, but yeah, I get it. You want to be selective in what your own nervous system can handle.
Hmm.
Right. And I don't even like to say that out loud because I feel like it has been in the past perceived as a bit of a weakness, like, oh, I'm nervous, like whatever. No, but nervous system, like my level of stress and my reaction to it. So if I'm in a vulnerable position and I've just left my job, I'm starting this new business and I have someone that I'm considering telling, and I can anticipate that there's going to be a negative reaction, and I can anticipate that my own nervous system just, I'm not up for that. Then I just didn't. I didn't have those conversations yet. I waited. I waited until I felt stronger, and eventually I did. I did feel stronger. So it, just take some time, but honor yourself, right? And your own piece, and recognize like how it's going to impact you and make the choice based on what's going to be the healthiest for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important that we acknowledge how vulnerable leaving a job is, getting fired from a
Mhm.
job, um, even thinking about the fact that maybe the thing that you're in right now is not really aligned with you, is not really what you want to be doing for the next 6 months to a year. These are all really difficult questions to have with yourself, difficult places to be. And so I think a part of going through this transitional phase is also knowing when to take care of yourself. And I don't just mean like go and get like a massage and, go to the spa for the day, but taking care of yourself in terms of don't share if you're not ready to share. Tell the right people. Tell the people that you feel will be rooting for you, that are going to have your back, that are, just going to be there for you when you're like, I have imposter syndrome. Like, am I really doing this? Did I make the right choice? Like, these are all real things that come up. And I don't know about you, Jenna, but like, I feel like I go through these phases where like things are smooth sailing and I'm like, oh, I'm doing great. I'm like totally pumped about things that I'm working on. And then I'll go through a phase of like, oh, what's going on? Like, this is not working anymore. Like, what if this is wrong? Or like, I have to go back to what I was doing. Like, and it could be just like me mentally, but like, I go through these like constant conversations with myself of like, I have to pep myself up. And it's hard when it's just you by yourself, too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that's part of the reason, honestly, that I took the part-time job, because it's another circle of people that I get to interact with every day, or the 3 days that I'm there, and that's very supportive and empowering, right? So yeah, I agree.
And I like that you're talking about this part-time job that you took. I actually also took a part-time corporate job in that transitional phase where I just left. I had this opportunity that showed up for me, and I thought, why not? But I remember when I took the job, it was interesting because I got offered a full-time position. And I remember really having to think about it. I'm like, like all of a sudden I had this, ooh, I just got like another role, like out of nowhere. I just left and I'm getting offered this position. And I thought about it for a minute and I said, wait, I just left to be able to start my business. If I sign up again for similar role, just different company, I still wouldn't be like true to myself and the reason that I left. So I thought I can't do it. And so I declined and they came back to me and they're like, well, how can we make this work for you? Because we really want you to join it. And I was like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. I was totally just taken aback and I thought, okay, well, if I get to, it's almost like the question that you got, which is how do you want to work? And then I thought, okay, I don't want part-time, but I can do some consulting where I set my hours, I pick the limit of time that I want to spend on it. And that has been perfect for me. So I would say to other people that are going through this transitional phase is it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? Because when you're starting your own thing, you might not have every single duck in a row, right? Because it takes time to build up your client base, to build up the business, to have the confidence in whatever it is that you're doing, even though you might have been studying for many years, doing it in practice is a whole different experience. So even having like that little stepping stone of, you know what? I'm still good at my previous job. I still have that skill and that talent. So I'm going to put it to use, but I'm going to figure out how I want to work on that. I'm going to make my own schedule. I'm going to manifest and find a job that allows me to be part-time or to be whatever it is, works for you while still getting to focus my energy on what I really want to do eventually. And then you get to this point where, at least this has happened to me, where the part-time job that I took, the consulting job, has just naturally ended. I kind of said to myself, I think I'm probably going to do this for maybe 6 months to a year. And it just naturally has come to a close. And it's been beautiful. And I feel like last year, if that
Oh,
happened, I've
good.
been like a little apprehensive about it or nervous. And this year it just felt very natural to me. I'm like, oh, okay. I think it's time to move on.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's not some big traumatic thing that you have to get over. It's just like, okay, well, it ran its course and I'm on to my next chapter, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I loved what you were saying earlier about like you have to figure out what works for you. It's really about carving your own path and sitting with what does that look like for you, whether it means like the hours you work, where you work, who you work with, what you're working on. Those are all the questions to be thinking about when you're really considering this next phase, the phase that might not be the traditional 9 to 5 or the traditional corporate role or what you've been doing for 10 years or more.
Yeah. I mean, I was definitely qualified to do a lot of different roles within this company. And they were asking me, they're like, you have the experience. Why wouldn't you want to take one of these quality roles? I'm like, because I know I'm qualified for it, but I know how much stress is going to come with that. And I'm not interested in taking on that stress, you know? And I think being honest with ourselves about that is really important. I think another thing when you're evaluating, is this job still aligned with me? I liked what you said about, okay, so let's say I leave, I go to another company, I take on the same type of job, different people, different company, same responsibilities. And try it on. Like, is that going to make me happy, or is this going to be more the same? Like, I'm still not going to enjoy it because I don't really want to be doing it. And I think the other thing that people need to really consider, especially women, is before you make any drastic moves, get your hormones tested. Women are in perimenopause starting in their late 30s, and most of them have no idea.
Mm.
And there's not a lot of great information out there and supports. But if you can balance your hormones, you'll sail right through all those transitions. But if you're unbalanced, and like me, going out to, sales dinners, drinking martinis and living that life, which I enjoyed. But once my hormones shifted, my body could no longer tolerate that anymore. And now that I'm rebalanced, I feel I'm back on track. But for a couple of years, it was unbalanced and uncomfortable and terrible symptoms. And at that point, I was like, is it my job, or is it my own hormonal situation that's causing this angst? So I had to really evaluate all that for myself. And it turned out it was both. It was the job and it was my hormones. And the fact that I really truly had a desire to start a new business that was hopefully going to help relieve stress for others as well as myself. But I think that's an important thing for people to consider, is really look at your own health and, really find out where your levels are, your hormone levels are, and figure out the best ways to get them straightened out. It's just overall your life with work, your family, and everything else will be better when that's all in balance.
I love that you bring up the hormone thing because I just started cycle syncing, which I don't know how many people know about it. I literally just found out about it, but I never really thought about my hormones as much as I have within the last like week, to be honest, since I've started this process of figuring out the different phases in my menstrual cycle. And I realize this is totally for a different episode, but it aligns with what you were saying, that I think as women, it's like, it's not something we talk about. I think we normalize the fact that like, oh, for women, hormones go up and down, and it is what it is. And that's the cross that we need to bear as women. And at least that's what I assumed growing up. And I'm in my late 30s. And now I'm thinking like, wow, where was this thing? Where was this realization? Like, I wish I knew this earlier. So I'm totally like on board with what you're saying. Like, and not just, hormones. I realize that's more for women, but I think figuring out your health, seeing like where are you most impacted? I mean, the people I see often are dealing with stress, anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, just common complaints that are going on. And I think just something you said earlier is we've been so accustomed to pushing through. It's like, oh, I feel this way. It's okay. I'm gonna take a nap.
Well, that's actually a good solution. Most people won't take the nap, right? Like, to your
True.
point, oh, I'm not feeling well, let me take a nap. But really what ends up happening is, oh, I feel like I should take a nap, and I'm just going to get this one last email done, or this
Oh,
one
yeah.
report, or when I have to get all this done for all these other people, and then there's nothing left in the tank for us at the end, for
Mm,
ourselves, right? I think a nap is brilliant. 20 minutes and then get back on track.
do
That's
it.
actually
Yeah.
very supportive. So it's a challenge. It's a big challenge.
So, what would you say to someone who might be feeling unfulfilled in their job, who might be dealing with health issues or stress, but they're too scared to leave? What would you say to them?
So I would say get your hormones checked, make sure it's not the job. And if it's internal, then you manage that and then the job's fine. But I would really look at, is it the job? If you moved to a different job and did the same thing, would you be happy? Like, is it the people? Is it like really like evaluate like where it's coming from, and what would you prefer to be doing? Like,
Mm,
that's a question I think is rarely asked. What do I prefer? I prefer to, do a part-time job and do my sound bowls at night in the salt cave. I mean, so I realize that, but most people don't even, they're like, what do you mean what I prefer? Like I'm doing it. It's like, no, but really think about that for yourself.
Yeah.
Is there like, do you want to continue down in the same industry? Do you want to switch industries? How much time, what do you think that would take? Find someone doing the thing you want to be doing and find out how do they get there? How do they do it? How do they put that in place? Or do they need help? Do you want a partner? Do you want support? There's a lot of different approaches that people can take to really, not keep themselves stuck, right? They obviously need to evaluate their family finances. What's the impact? There was a moment where I was like, and that's why I went back to my other corporate job before, was because my daughter's going to college. I have to make sure there's enough money in there. And that's a valid concern. But then it got to the point where I was like, okay, I made enough and now I need to prioritize my health and prioritize what I actually prefer doing that's actually aligned with my highest purpose here. I think that everybody's got, something that they would rather be doing or something that it would be helpful for the community around them that they haven't given themselves an opportunity to even consider. So I think all those things in the evaluation, I think it would be helpful to make an informed decision, and also about the timing. So for mine, if you're feeling these feelings and you can really kind of like say, hey, okay, I'm going to give this job 6 more months. And then in that 6 months, I'm going to try and find my next one. But that's a reasonable plan. That is not the timeline plan I gave my poor husband, right? Like I worked until I couldn't work anymore. And then I gave him exactly 2 weeks notice and went on that sabbatical with no income coming in. We weren't prepared financially to do that, but we made it work. But it was a stress that I didn't want to put on him or our family or myself, but I had to. That was the choice I had to make at that point. And of course, he was supportive in me making that. But that was, I would say evaluate it, prioritize it, and then figure out your timing.
Mm, totally. Totally.
And if you can do it in an empowering way, like you did with the solstices, the eclipses, even better. But like something that jazzes you up, that makes you feel like, okay, I'm making a significant choice for myself, and it's gonna let it empower you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the one thing I'll add to what you were saying with finding your purpose, right, is, you know, I want people to know that having a purpose doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be this like grandiose goal or mission, like curing cancer or going to the moon or finding a new planet or something, right? It can be like
Right.
your purpose can be something so simple as long as it like feels right to you in your heart, in your body, like something that probably has been calling you for some time and maybe you've ignored it because you thought, how can I really make money doing that? Right? That doesn't seem like that would be financially a good option. Or, I think we talk ourselves out of our purpose sometimes because we just don't think that it's going to serve our material purposes or whatever we feel, is like we're used to or we're accustomed to. So purpose can really be so broad. It could even be like maybe you just want to be a mother. You just want to be at home and be a mother and have a farm and have chickens. And through that purpose, you are going to be bringing love and all this delicious food to other people and you're going to be providing others with like nutritious meals. Like that's a great purpose even though it may not seem like it is on the surface. So, broad visions of purpose.
I think multiple purposes, right? I feel like one of my highest purposes is to anchor the higher energies that are coming onto the planet during this time. And I do that with the sound therapy. I do that with the crystals and the energy work. But I also do that with just how I move through the world, right? I try to radiate love and light as much as I can and I love interacting with people as I go through my day in a pleasant way. I actually read a thing that people live longer when they operate their life like that.
I love it. So, Jinna, how can people get in touch with you or contact you or find you?
Well, because I'm afraid of my own success, I don't have a website yet. It's still under construction, but I suppose you could email me at zenrisewellnessevents@gmail.com. That's the best way to do it at this
Okay.
point.
And I know that you're doing some awesome corporate events, and I know you and I were partnering on that. And
Hmm?
sound bowls at the Salt Cave, and you're an energy healer. So there's so much that you're working on, and I can't wait to see what's next for you.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. I love partnering with you and collaborating, and it's just I feel like it's fulfilling my one of my highest purposes. So thank you.
Yay, thank you. Thank you for listening. If you're interested in becoming a client and working with me, visit me at nunatherapy.com or follow me on social media at Nuna Therapy for regular content and inspiration. Until next time.